Hi guys, so today I'm coming to you with another ship breakdown for Armada, and we're going to be talking about the Imperial Raider. So this is a ship that came out in Wave 2. This is actually my first breakdown for the Wave 2 ships, and it's the first real small speedy ship for the Empire. Now this ship originally wasn't used a whole lot. It was used a little bit, mostly as a filler ship, but it wasn't a ship that really got much versatility until recently. So I'm going to talk about the two types of ships that it comes with. We're going to talk about a couple of sample builds. We're going to talk about the titles, and we're going to talk about some different roles they can play, and also what commanders work best with the Raider as your focal point. So the Raider comes in two varieties. It comes with the Raider 1 at 44 points and the Raider 2 at 48 points. It makes for a very cheap Imperial ship, but it's also a very easily killed Imperial ship. Now for a small ship, it's lucky because it does have the brace, but it doesn't have redirect. To make up for this, it has two evades, which is great, but it doesn't have the turbo laser slot, so you can't give it turbo laser reroute circuits. It also doesn't have any red dice. One of the strengths of this ship is the fact that both versions of it have two anti-squadron dice, so it makes for a very effective anti-squadron ship. Your Raider 1 has two black anti-squadron dice, and it also has the unique ability of having the not unique, but for the Raider, it's the only one to have the ordnance upgrade slot. While the Raider 2 has a blue and a black, and instead of ordnance, it has the ion cannon slot in its place. So that's basically the difference between the two. Also, the Raider 2 has a blue, an extra blue die in the front, as opposed to an extra black die. So the Raider 1 basically is your black die ship, and the Raider 2 is basically your blue die ship. And it's actually nice because they both have very different jobs to do on the battlefield. Your Raider 1 might want to run a sample configuration here of Minister Tua with ECMs to ensure that it can brace to get in close and stay alive. And maybe you give it Ordnance Experts and Assault Proton Torpedoes. So this is for a standard attack, close attack run ship to run in close and do a whole lot of damage at close range. Problem is, a lot of times these would die, so now that you have Minister Tua, you can, potentially keep it alive long enough to get in there and do its damage. And then hopefully your first player, so you can then activate it again next turn and fly to safety or relative safety. I know a sample Raider 2 might have Admiral Monteferrat on him, and he wants to probably stay at mid-range to use those blue dice. And maybe he'll use Overload Pulse and Fire Control Team. And that could combo well with something like if you had a Star Destroyer with the Avenger title, and you just wanted to, kind of set up all the rest of your ships to be able to unload on one ship with now it has exhausted defense tokens. So let's talk about titles. There are two titles that come with the Raider Corvette. The titles are the Instigator is the first one, and now the Instigator is the one title I see used a little bit less, but both titles are very, very similar, and so I'm going to talk about them. So the Instigator, basically it ties up squadrons. So any enemy squadrons at distance one of you are treated as though they're engaged by two additional squadrons. Now, the reason that this says 2 is because grit also came out at the same time. So if somebody has grit, they're still engaged, and they're treated as being engaged. Now, if there are no squadrons present, they can still attack you. So just because they're engaged, it doesn't mean they're stuck to attacking squadrons. If there are no squadrons there, they can still attack you. Or if there are heavy squadrons there, then now they have a choice. But so it's a great way to lock up or to tie up squadrons. And it's great if you're exercising your maneuverability. If you're at speed 4, it may not be the best. If you're running Instigator, you probably want to run a little bit slower or potentially slower. Keep the nav command handy. But it's a great way to tie up squadrons to really kind of screw up somebody's movement, and likely if you bring an Instigator onto the field, your opponent may split up their squadrons significantly. And if they can't, for example, if you go up against a Reimer ball, then they may prioritize the Instigator as the target that they want to blow up. So one possible way you might run the Instigator, and some of the stuff I'm giving here is just possibilities, not necessarily the best way to go, is you might run it with a Raider 2, and you might run leading shots, and you might run quad laser turrets. You also might run ruthless strategists, and just to mess somebody up, maybe throw Titus on there. And the reason I put Titus on here, I haven't put him in any videos yet, but I think he could be fun if somebody does deploy, a Reimer ball or a heavy squadron base, and they push him out really far, and they say, okay, we're gonna go speed 1, and you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna start you at speed 2, so now force you to bump all your squadrons and just screw up your entire formation. It's just a mind game you can play with somebody, and that kind of fits into this whole method of screwing up somebody's well-laid plans. So it's, again, Titus isn't crucial for this. It's just, it might be a fun thing to do, and this is a type of title that might support, messing with somebody like that. But Ruthless Strategists might be a good one for here as well, especially if you bring somebody like Bosk along with you, and force you to get some damage on him to make him stronger as well. And then your opponent wouldn't be able to run away from him because you got them tied up with your Corvette. And that's another reason why I said maybe the Raider 2 for this one, because now you can attack farther away. You have more options. So Ruthless Strategists might work better in this case for the 2 as opposed to the 1, because you have a smaller circle. So there's that. Now I want to talk about the Impetuous. The Impetuous is a much better title in my opinion, although both are good, and you could potentially use both in the same build. But the Impetuous basically gives you an extra attack against a squadron. So it's a really good way to go after that one pesky squadron that has 1 hit point left, or maybe that ace that already used their scatter and now you're going to attack them again. And it has a lot of versatility. And so I really like the Impetuous. And for this one, and again, you can put it on either one. There's advantages to putting it on the 2 because you get the bigger range. But on this one, I like to run this one with the Raider 1, and because I like black dice. Black dice are generally easier to get hits on squadrons because they have so many hit symbols on them. But the thing that really makes the Raider great right now is what I'll put on this title. I put the Flechette Torpedo and Ordnance Experts. Now this is just so good. Like these two, and I'm going to put more on here, but I want to talk about these 2 first. Flechette Torpedo and Ordnance Expert are a match made in heaven. It's really brought the Raider, back into the game and made it relevant again, and made it be feared by a lot of people, because in one action I can shut down your entire squadron base potentially. Now you're going to see this coming, and I can't move then shoot. So there is that you'll have reaction time. But if you're going to run Flechette Torpedoes and Ordnance Experts on a Raider 1, you're going to probably want to be first player, and you're going to want a lot of activations. So I would suggest not running an ISD 2 fully loaded. You probably want to have like maybe 6 activations in your list, and save this guy till last, so you can go last and then first, and kind of start, figure something like that out. Or even pair it up with the Instigator, so the Instigator ties down the squadrons, they can't leave, and then the Impetuous shows up to be able to finish them off. So there's things you can do there. So Flechette Torpedo and Ordnance Experts are a really, really nice combination, and if you can't kill them, you can at least stop them from being able to do anything. Additionally, let's put Agent Callus on there, because Agent Callus takes advantage of that extra attack. So if there is a unique squadron, bam, we've got an extra attack, or an extra die we can add. And for this one, I'm going to say let's put Point Defense Reroute on there, because I want to maybe be able to re-roll my crits. I have to be at close range. I'm already at close range because I said that we're putting this one on a Raider 1. So all my squadron attacks have to be at close range anyway. And granted, my black dice, I wouldn't need to re-roll the crits, but it's for things like Agent Callus, right? Let's say I'm going up against somebody with scatter, and I add a blue die. Well, on the blue die, I want to be able to re-roll my crits because I'm fishing for that accuracy. So maybe I add a red die. Now the red die has, you know, the double damage side, and that's really what you want. So at least if you can re-roll your crits, you have a better chance of getting the double damage side on the red die. It's an option. It's maybe not the best option here. Counter 1 might be, you know, a slightly better option. So, you know, we could potentially put the quad laser turrets on. But point defense reroute can work with Agent Callus, and it's not something I would pick all the time, but it is an option. But the real big combo here is the flechette torpedoes and ordnance experts. And then Agent Callus is good on any raider. He works on, you know, he works on both, but I can't have him on both because he's, you know, he's one of those guys you can only have one of. So, if only you could have more than one Agent Callus. You know, if the Clone Wars took place right here, I'd have Agent Callus on all my raiders, and nobody would ever fly uniques. So those are your two titles. I'm going to talk about the different roles that it can perform. It basically, we've already talked about this, but anti-squadron, right? The Raider is a very effective anti-squadron presence, especially now with Flechette Torpedo and Ordnance Expert. We kind of already talked about that, especially with the titles as well. So I don't really need to give you any sample builds there. But another role is kind of a semi-swarmy ship, because they are some of the cheapest ships for the Empire. You can fit a lot of these into a build, so you could have your main force behind and have maybe 3 raiders up front trying to, you know, charge forward, close the gap. It might be like a suicide swarm, but you know they could definitely get in there, and you know you're kind of going to have 2 different types, and you can either work. You're going to either have your, you know, if you're going to run them in a swarm, you probably want something to draw a crit. So a black crit for your Raider 1s or a blue crit for your Raider 2s, and you know, and have them perform either damage for your black crits or some type of support utility damage for your blue crits. You know, whether it's making them discard tokens or exhausting all their defense, you know, something like that. So you know, so that kind of swarm, the crit-based swarm, it's kind of a unique role. So I just say swarm, but it's in this case it's more of a crit-based swarm. You don't really want to send them in naked, but you can send them in with maybe just a single upgrade each. And then the third option is kind of the rogue ship, the option, the floater, or what I like to call the objective seeker. So setting one up by itself, see, they're a fast ship, and you can potentially make them very maneuverable too if you stick to navigation commands. So maybe you have an objective like capture the VIP, or you need to get somewhere really quick. You can send these guys around the enemy fleet and hopefully outmaneuver them and just go do what you need to do. Maybe you need to send a ship off to hit a couple of objectives and make sure you get the bonus victory points that way without having its loss really hurt by, you know, not being with your fleet. It's cheap enough that you'll still have the bulk of your fleet, and it's fast enough that it can get the job done. And maybe if it does get the job done, then it can turn around and try to flank. I don't say that it's a flanker though, because it doesn't have red dice, so for it to flank it has to get in really close, and then at that point it may die by the time it gets in really close. But if you're going to run this as like a rogue, a floater, you know, I like the term floater because it can do whatever you need it to do. If you end up doing an objective that requires you to send somebody out, you can send one out by himself. If you end up not having one of those objectives, then you can just keep him with the group and, you know, have him hopefully get in close and try to do some damage. If you're going to run one in a kind of a floating configuration, there is one kind of experimental loadout that I was thinking, or at least a potential combo I was thinking, which would make a really good single raider in what I would call like the rogue configuration, and that is to give it rapid launch bay. Yes, it only has a squadron value of 1, I'm aware of that, but give it rapid launch bay, and I'll put Boba Fett on there. Now, this is all pending an official FAQ, so I'm putting myself at the mercy of future viewers will be able to come back and say, oh, you were wrong, or maybe I'll get a future high five and say you were right. But the consensus right now, from what I have gathered through my own research, is that the community tends to agree if you deploy Boba Fett through rapid launch bays, then once he's on the board, that counts as the start of his activation. So you will basically be able to put him down and then do damage and then shoot. So that makes for actually a really nice little combination. And if you toss on my buddy Flight Commander on there, now you have increased the cost of your Raider a little bit. It's now going to be more expensive. But now you can move up to speed 4, then drop Boba Fett, do a damage, and then attack. And Boba Fett's got some great dice, and he's bomber. You know, and he's rogue too, so you won't have to keep doing squadron commands. You just need it the one time. But it's a great way for you to drop a really nasty squadron behind enemy lines. And so I haven't done this yet. I haven't actually done it yet, but I plan on doing it. And now, of course, everybody's going to know what my plan is. So when if you're somebody that I play and you're watching this, you're like, next time I see a Boba Fett and a Raider, I know what his plan is. But I just think that would be really cool. And just to have that with you. If you go out for an objective, if somebody decides to, you're sending this guy over there, or I'll send a CR-90 after you, fine, because I'm going to come up to you, drop Boba Fett, do some damage, and then next turn, hopefully I'm at close range, so now I'll lay into you with, black dice, blue dice, and maybe a squadron command also to do Boba again, and might be able to just one-shot a single ship that's coming after, or maybe 1-2 punch a single ship that's coming after me. And if I don't need to go after an objective, or if I do need to go after an objective and you don't send anybody up after me, I can drop Boba early and he can fly over into the fight. He's got rogue. He doesn't need me. It makes you very, very versatile if you if you don't want to do any of the other like dedicated anti-squadron support or something like that. So Rapid Launch Bay and Boba Fett with Flight Commander, I think that it's really could be a very fun way to fly a Raider. So if you've only got one and you don't really want to try all that other stuff, try Rapid Launch Bay, Flight Commander, and Boba Fett, and let me know what you think. Because I think that's really cool. Now, if I am guilty and they do come up with an FAQ that says, no, you can't, that doesn't count as activating Boba Fett, then I'll be wrong. But if I'm right, give me a high five right here, because that means I got it right. So I'm putting myself out there. Hopefully I'm right on that one. So those are our roles. Let's talk about the commanders. Now, when I do my commanders, I say what commanders support this specific ship the best. So it doesn't necessarily mean that if I say this commander is the worst, that means they're a bad commander. It just means that what they give doesn't really help the Raider as much. So I'm going to rank them. I'm going to start at the bottom of the list, and the bottom is Constantine. Now, this is obvious. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Constantine, but he doesn't work with the Raider at all. He requires you to have medium or large ships. The Raider's a small ship. Constantine's going to be at the bottom of every small ship for the Empire because he does nothing for a small ship. Now, if your fleet has other large ships in it, he can still work. But I'm not talking about those other ships. I'm talking about the Raider. So Constantine's at the bottom. Next up, Tarkin. Now, Tarkin's also very, very expensive, and he's also one of my favorite Imperial commanders, but the Raider only has a command value of 1. And that means it can only hold 1 token. And any token it wants, you can just, do that command first turn, and then have your token ready, and, and go. It's very easy with a 1 command ship to be able to do any action it wants, and to be able to get any token it wants. So there's very minimal value that Tarkin can give a Raider. There is some, but it's very minimal, and that's why he's so low on this list. Next is Jerjerrod. Now, Jerjerrod doesn't give the Raider a whole lot. It gives it some, because at higher speeds, the Raider does lose some maneuverability, especially at 3 and 4, it loses all of its clicks for the first option. So Jerjerrod can help the Raider, but at speeds 1 and 2, it's fully maneuverable. So half of the Raider's speeds, Jerjerrod does nothing for it. And when you're going after squadrons, you're going to want to slow down a little bit, at least once you get ready to engage. And so you're going to spend, I would say, a good portion of your time. I mean, it depends on the role and the way that you're fielding the Raider, but a lot of Raiders are going to spend a lot of time very close to speed 2 to take advantage of that fantastic maneuverability it has at slower speeds. And at those speeds, Jerjerrod won't do anything for you. And even at higher speeds, this is a fairly fragile ship, so you really don't want to have to take that damage if you don't have to. But, I mean, Jerjerrod's not terrible for it. He's just, because half of their speeds, he would do nothing for them, and that's why he ranks a little bit lower. All right, so we're moving up. Next up is Tag. Now, Tag is kind of in the middle of the list. He works for this ship because they have only a single brace, so there is that chance that they'll lose it. but he's not that high up on the list because by the time tag triggers and can give you your token back, your Raider may be dead. They don't usually survive that long. So while they can, they're probably not going to. Now, if they come up with something in the future, like an officer that allows you to, swap one defense token for a redirect, then tag might be amazing for this ship because this ship would love to get a redirect. But right now, tag's just kind of in the middle. He's got his uses, but they're not that great for this ship. Moving up, Vader. Now, Vader is all around good. He doesn't rank that high for this particular ship because of the fact that there are so many other ways that you can reroll dice with this ship. I think Vader tends to work best for ships that have a lot of red dice, but because usually if you're going to run a Raider 1, you probably want Ordnance Experts equipped. You probably do. You can even want that on a Raider 2, but it's better on a Raider 1. And then for a Raider 2, your blue dice, a lot of times you just don't need to re-roll blue dice because they don't have any blanks. So while Vader could work, and he could work if you had a lot of Raiders and you didn't want to put Ordnance Expert on all of them, if you had enough Raiders, then Vader might be cost effective depending on what you're substituting in that slot. If you're going to put something else on your Raider 1 in place of Ordnance Experts, then I can see Vader would actually really work very well there. However, typically people run Ordnance Experts there because you're going to shoot multiple times, especially if you're doing something like the Impetuous and Callus, and you're just going to, you're probably going to use Ordnance Experts and save your defense tokens. Next up is Screed. Now, it's rare for Screed to rank higher than Vader on something, but the reason for it is because this ship has two different roles that can really rely on the crit, either the black crit or the blue crit. And if you're running this ship in a way that you need to get that blue crit for the crit effect, or you need to get that black crit for that damage crit effect, then Screed is more reliable than Vader. And usually when you run the blue crit effect and you're trying to hit somebody with some kind of ion cannon, you can't leave it up to chance. You need it to happen because you may not get a second shot. You may be dead before next round. So because of Screed's guarantee, I put him above Vader here. Because rerolls are not a guarantee. Although Screed's drawback is he's only once per turn, but he's also cheaper. And so when you need the guarantee, go for Screed. Next up is Mahdi. Mahdi is pretty high on this list because this ship is a little bit fragile and it can use the extra hull. But just Mahdi's just universally good, so he's going to rank high on every list. And there's really not much more I can say about that. He's good, and he doesn't have a single drawback. He's pretty cheap, and he works for everything. So yeah, so Mahdi's on here. And then the top is Ozzel, and I struggled to put Ozzel this high because I don't like Ozzel. But this is the one ship that he really can shine with. At least that's available right now. He really, really can shine here because of the fact that this ship has such bad maneuverability at higher speeds, but such great maneuverability at lower speeds. You can start out at speed 4, get into range of enemy squadrons, or get into range of an enemy ship. And maybe at speed 4, you can shoot past the front arc of a Liberty or an enemy Star Destroyer. And you can get into the side arcs in one move. And then the very next turn, slow down to speed 2 where you have perfect maneuverability. Or even slow down to speed 1 if you have a nav token. So you can have full control over a ship that only has half control. And I think Ozzel really, really shines with this ship. Or, for example, you use this ship in the anti-squadron function and you lock up enemy ships. You zoom into position. Maybe you're at speed 3 and you want to slow down to speed 1, or even come to a full stop, potentially, if you want to make sure that the squadrons stay tied up. Maybe you're running the Instigator and you want to make sure the entire enemy squadron presence is locked up. Maybe you want to slow down to speed 0. I usually don't ever recommend going to speed 0 because you're not allowed to use any of your defense tokens. But against squadrons, you potentially could, because the evades aren't going to do you any good. And the brace may not do you any good either, unless you're going up against a Reimer ball, in which case you might have 2 damage coming in, but usually squadrons are going to hit you for 1 damage. And so brace would be useless against that either. So you could potentially slow down to speed 0 if you wanted to make sure you tied up a huge group of squadrons. And having that flexibility is really nice. And I think this is the one ship that benefits most from it. So that's why Ozzel is ranked number 1. And this is the only ship I'll probably ever rank Ozzel number 1 for, but this is the one that he can benefit the most. So this has been the Raider, guys. Let me know what you think. If you like this video, please go ahead and subscribe. There's a lot more of this sort of thing coming, and I'll be doing all the rest of Armada's Wave 2 here in the very near future. And if you are an Armada fan, stay tuned next week, because the Gamma trade show is happening next week, so they're going to announce a ton of new stuff. So at least that's what we expect. So there will be I'll be bringing it all to you guys as soon as they announce it. So stay tuned, and I do appreciate all the comments, likes, and thumbs up. So you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching.